Okay, just give me a thumbs up when you're ready.
Thank you.
All right. Anyway, hi everyone. I hope you're enjoying a rich and restful winter break. Hi, Wea. Hi, Carol. Hi, Carlo. I'm so glad to see your faces and just for you to carve time together as we unpack a teaching practice that I hope will enrich your teaching as much as it did for me. Yeah, we're going to talk about a tilt checklist here in recognition of time. We'll just get straight to it. And for the purpose of this discussion, please feel free to interrupt whenever, right? The expectation here is that we can just chat, we can talk, and if you have any on-site experiences to bring to bear, please share it. It will help elevate our discussion today. So real quickly here, brief outline. Well, we'll talk about three big ideas, but first, have a quick activation for us in your mind's eye or with a piece of paper or with a Word doc or with just to mull through this, I'd like for you to think of three key words that come to mind when you think of online instruction. And we're talking completely online asynchronous or synchronous instruction, okay? And just give me a thumbs up when you got those three keywords. Don't think too hard about it. Just lean into your intuition, your gut. Thank you, Carla, for the thumbs up. Oh, excuse me, there's more participants here. Let me make sure. Hi, Kate, welcome to our discussion as well. Hope you're having a good one. Yeah, all right, thank you, Carol, excuse me, I'm orienting myself to Zoom here. Okay, throw some keywords our way, folks. What do you got?
I said engagement. I think that's one of the things that came to my mind. Engagement, student and instructor engagement.
Okay, thank you so much, Carol. Student and instructor engagement. You got to be present, physically and mentally present with the content. What else do we got, folks? Challenging, COVID, disconnected. Ooh, it sounds like you were there 3 years ago too, Carl. Thank you so much for sharing those as well. So holding on to those keywords, let's go on to the next set of circles there, folks. Let's unpack that keyword and just feel free to choose one of those. Unpack it with a sentence, okay? So challenging, what would that mean? Engagement, what would that mean? Okay, and give me a thumbs up when you've got that. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Carlo. Hi, Tom. Welcome to our discussion. Happy to see you. And hi, Jie Zhang as well.
Well, good morning from Tom. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. All right, so let's hear from a couple people again. So let's unpack the keyword. And Carol, if you'd be so kind, what sentence did you come up with? Or how did you unpack the keywords of engagement? Oh,
You did. I used the word engagement, and I kind of stole the word or the sentence that we used when I first said that word, just the importance of engagement for both the instructor and the student during online learning.
okay. And thank you for reiterating again. And not to belabor this, because I recognize we have time here, is thinking to your keywords and thinking to your points, folks. What practice have you honed in on to support that particular keyword in the context of online learning? And this is where the challenge is. How do we make it more specific to the context of online learning? So give it a few moments to think about that and give me a thumbs up as well. All right. And welcome to our discussion, Douglas Hemphill. Hope you're having a good time wherever you are.
Just enjoying the snow.
All right. How about this? Either over Zoom, if you're comfortable with talking, or typing it out. What would be one practice that supported your keyword and your point in turn?
This is Carlo. For me, I'm currently doing an asynchronous class, and I struggle sometimes with the sense of disconnection from my students. And so what I've tried to lean into is posting more video posts in announcements, just so they can see who I am and have a little bit more of a kind of quasi face-to-face. So I've been doing that a little bit more this winter session.
Okay, thank you, Carlo, for unpacking with your experiences this winter session and for sharing that you're teaching an online synchronous course. Okay, so holding on to your keywords, folks, we're going to unpack a major part of online learning that we tends to get missed. And here's the thing, the fun part about what we're talking about today, this idea of assessment, it helps support, more likely than not, it will help support those three keywords that you identified and your sentences and your practices as well. We can consider it as complementary. So this is our guiding questions for this particular session. Oh, and Ji Zhang, thank you. Connection, asynchronous online, video, weekly reminders. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. So we're going to talk about what we know empirically of best practices in online college instruction. And unsurprisingly, you'll find that a lot of these are things that you've noticed in your own teaching practice, and they're pretty intuitive, but it doesn't help for us. It does help for us to rehearse them. We're going to review the TILT checklist today, and we're going to do some practice with some pretty brass tack general introductory assignments that you expect in lower level courses, and we can also hopefully apply it to our own assignments as well. So I shared in the chat here, you may have noticed that 2 links for your notes and for your review later on and for your critique. The PowerPoint is available for your review today, this presentation, and there's also the TILT checklist as well for your review and for your critique as well. But let's keep going. And like I mentioned at the start, for folks who just popped in, please interrupt whenever, okay? You have so much background knowledge, you have so much experiences to bring to bear, please share it with us and it will help elevate our discussion. So yeah, online instruction as with face-to-face instruction, there's a lot of different perspectives and assumptions over what should be reviewed, how should it be taught, and yeah, how learners should engage and demonstrate mastery of that content. But we have so much rich research out there and commentary that points to 3 truisms in our online practice. And you all were hitting it up immediately in our discussion so far. This idea of students' cognitive presence is not just about, especially with the nature of online learning, it's not just about logging on, it's about being truly mentally present with each other and with the content. This idea of informative feedback has also resonated with our best research as well, and this idea of clear communication. Of course, these are things that matter for brick and mortar in-person learning, but they are certainly important for online learning because of the nature of the disembodied nature of online learning. So thinking back to it, if we were to take these 3 principles and to unpack them with a statement and the practice, how do they translate? For example, student presence is this idea of guide on the side, self-directed learning, and you can lean into UDL, informative feedback, where you think about benchmarks that are consistent and consequential, while you have you design and present an assignment rubric. And clear communication, again, disembodied nature of online learning. You have a class questions thread where students can pose their questions and hopefully people can answer from the rest of the class or the instructor as well. So if we know this is to be true, that online instruction is moderated by students' presence, informative feedback, and clear communication, one enduring practice that has come out from, I believe, the Ohio State, the TILT project here is the TILT checklist. And I've linked this particular checklist again in the chat for your review, but it's this idea of thinking about how our assessments and how our actual coursework can better activate those 3 principles. I think we take it for granted, especially as I'm looking at the screen here, y'all are tenured faculty, like long-standing veteran faculty. It's easy to forget that when you're starting out as an instructor, in my shoes, that a lot of your assignments took time, and that the assumptions that you bore into them as you design them are not necessarily so apparent. This TILT checklist helps slow the process down and help us think through our assignments again. Okay, it brings us back to that idea of being practitioners for the first time again. Looking at the chat here, welcome to our discussion, Natasha. Hope you're staying wherever you are. So if you would be so kind to open up, whenever you do get a chance to open up the TILT checklist on the chat page there, let's unpack it a little bit. I know there's a lot of terms and sentences there, but in a nutshell, you can distill it to these 3 things. It's a framework that prompts us as educators to consider the extent that an assignment, whatever it is, conveys purpose, task, and criteria. And it is, like I mentioned, it was based off the work of folks from the TILT project. And let's unpack purpose here. And it refers to the extent that whenever you design an assignment and present the assignment, crucially present the assignment to students, you state how it matters. and how it supports student knowledge and or skills. Aha, absolutely, Doug. Thank you, or excuse me, Douglas. Thank you so much for checking in on that, or for advocating on that. So that's the PowerPoint for today, folks. And this is the tilt checklist for today as well. Thank you, Douglas. All right, so how can we better hit up purpose? Well, mention, this is coming from my department, curriculum and instruction. Talk about how it supports licensure standards. Or if you're not necessarily beholden to licensure standards, talk about how it meets disciplinary expectations. You gotta know this for this job. You gotta know this to be a competent member of this field. Or you can also connect it with real life. This is something that any person in civic society should be able to talk about and to be able to enact on. So an example here is drawing from chemistry, general chemistry. We are going to work on our stoichiometry lab because it will help demonstrate working proficiency in making sense of how substances relate with each other, right? And because you're all in this AP Chem class, or you're in this advanced Chem class, it's going to help us with advanced study on equilibrium, right? So the more you can explain the purpose of an assignment to students, the more likely that it's going to resonate with them and connect with them as well. So that's the first thing here. The task. Now this one is probably, I imagine all of us have opened up our course evals. It's this thing of could be clear, could be clear, could be clear, right? And this one is a big one. It's this idea of how does your assignment, to what extent does your assignment describe its parts, processes, sequences, and benchmarks for what counts as quality work? So this could be as simple as taking your expectations at the end and breaking it down to further steps, into further steps, into further steps. So after analyzing the content of the poster, do the pieces of the evidence support their conclusion, why or not? It's unpacking the assumptions that you've brought to bear with an assignment. I think, like I mentioned, it's easy to take for granted that you know what you're looking for, but the students themselves don't necessarily know what you're looking for. Or more importantly than that, they don't know what they should be looking for, right? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to push them away from us, that they could independently evaluate their own work. The task criterion helps with that. And last but not least, to what extent do your assignments actually state what counts as an exemplary student submission, right? And this is the part that I think if we were to think of ratios in a pie, this is the part that we probably focus on the most as instructors, is we're thinking about what counts as good. So it's about balance, really. But an example of this is your discussion post will be graded based on the following criteria. A, did you select the concept discussed in this course? And B, can I clearly understand your prior post way of thinking about that concept? Whew. Folks, if I'm talking too fast, please say so. I just had a swig of coffee and I'm kind of, my heart is jumping off my chest. So there's that too. But anyway, so the nuance here, a little bit of wrinkles to this tilt checklist. A tilt checklist based assignment does not amount to an either or condition, right? Just because you say, oh, I hit this, I hit this, I hit this on that list, doesn't mean it's a tilt based assignment. You as the instructor, you as the content expert get to decide what matters depending on instructional context. So for example, if you're trying to, you may have noticed on the tilt checklist that it's asking if you have any pre-task or practice exercises with your assignment. Well, that might be inappropriate for certain coursework, like if you're working with master's students, right? At that level, you'd expect that they would have a command on subject content and you wouldn't necessarily have to belabor practice exercises. But having said that, why do we bother with the tilt checklist as a teaching tool? Well, it preempts three major bugaboos about coursework, right? Our students often wonder, why are we doing this? What must I do to do this? And how did I know I do it well? When you think about the tilt checklist and designing your coursework, your assignments especially, it preempts all that. It answers all that. Well, excuse me, we're not in the business of answering everything, right? Well, there's a high likelihood that your students' concerns will be mollified because you've done your due diligence with the tilt checklist. How much of this is making sense, folks, so far? Thank you for the nodding heads. Thanks for the smile. All right, let's keep going. So here we have the tilt checklist. Like we talked about, the three enduring research trends in effective online instruction, right? Student presence, clear communication, and informative feedback. And thank you for the thumbs up, Douglas. The tilt checklist helps fulfill all of those three principles. It's a neat way of honoring all those items. All right, so this is for, and Dr. Roller is here, when the first draft of this particular class for my first semester, a long time ago in a different institution, when I was trying to think of a comparable class to this thing called proactive behavior supports. And a little bit of a background knowledge for everyone here. With proactive behavior supports, we're in the business of trying to figure out more responsive, more proactive ways of addressing challenging student behavior rather than reacting, in a nutshell. But one of the major lodestone assignments is this, that they come up with, that they're able to gather evidence on that student or that particular individual, which is called an FBA, and to do something about it, which is a positive behavior support plan. Now, many moons ago in a different institution, in a different class, the assignment that I was given was this, right here on this particular slide. It is define a challenging behavior, conduct an FBA, develop a hypothesis, create a behavior intervention plan, select. That was it. And this was the major assignment for this course. Now, when course evals inevitably came in, a lot of them pointed to this being as a major point of concern, that there was not much guidance, that they didn't understand necessarily why this was so important or how it could relate. And finally, they don't know what would count as quality work. So after learning about the TILT framework, I was able to give it a shot with another section of the class in a later semester. And this is the first part to that particular language, right? And I won't belabor this, but here we have the first section is trying to unpack the purpose behind this assignment, where it exists and what is the point in terms of practice. In a nutshell, it's saying, hey, this is something that is crucial for you as a professional, as a practitioner, and there are challenging bits to it because that's the whole point behind trying to gauge behaviors. You're dealing with humans, and humans are tough. And that's the whole point behind this particular practice. So here we have revised assignment language that strikes up purpose. Now, this is the part of the steps, unpacking each and every one of those criteria into just a little bit more than just a keyword, right? If we go back to the prior slide here, let's see here, define the problem behavior. Well, not just that. We want to know what the behavior looks like in scope and contours and time and the different contexts that it emerges, right? And here we have the opportunity to actually explain it a little bit more than zero. How much of this is making sense so far, folks? Okay. And there's a note there. There's a possibility that you just keep going to this infinite regress. Oh, maybe I should keep adding to this. Maybe I should keep adding to this. Maybe I should keep adding to this. This is where it becomes art, right? This is where, after feedback from the students and upon a little bit of reflection, you can kind of start to realize what are the major non-negotiable items that need to be mentioned and what can be kind of reviewed in, well, not in class because it's online, but what can be kind of spot reviewed as the situation warrants. You'll notice that, yeah, you could give a 20-page explanation of an assignment, but there's that ratio. You have to find that balance. All right. And thank you for the thumbs up too, Douglas. So here we have the second part of that particular assignment with the FBA, so the PBSP, which is the behavior plan. Again, unpacking the items here from the prior slide of implement, monitor, evaluate to something with a bit more depth. All right. Okay, so, and here, the last item of trying to honor what counts as exemplary, I've taken a point, in my practice, I've started to share exemplary student submissions for students at the start of each semester so that they know what a one approach to that project looks like, to that assignment looks like. I found that having 2 or 3 model submissions has really helped students in terms of getting a grasp of what to do. And this is the fun part, I've noticed in feedback from students, they know it's doable. That what you're asking them is not something that you're just trying to make them kind of feel angst over, but this is truly something that is worthwhile and feasible for them to do, that they can indeed do this. So in here, when you share a student submission at the start of your semester, it's a powerful form of scaffolding. Okay. All right. It's honor time. We're at 9:20. How about this? We can skip the haiku and we can just go straight to some practice here, okay? Excuse me. Yep, and there's my timer going off too. Let's see. All right, let's do some practice here, folks. Here we have a general a general science biology lesson, right? So skim review here, just think into the 3 principles of tilt, right? Purpose, task, criteria. In what ways does this particular assignment fulfill those items, and in what ways could we possibly improve upon this? So it's 9:20, let's give this about 3 minutes or so, okay? So just go back through the tilt framework here and jot some ideas of how well this works as a tilt-based assignment and what we could do to improve it. All right, and I'll mute myself here for the next 3 minutes. Oops, excuse me. All right, folks. Thank you so much for reviewing through it. A question from Carlo, random question. Is the distinction between assignment and assessment important when it comes to the tilt framework? That's a great question, Carlo. At this juncture, I would say that no, right? A lot of our assignments should serve an assessment purpose. Why do we do the assignments if not to get a handle on where students' learning is, right? So for this particular discussion, I think we can say that they're one and the same, right? Any worthwhile assignment should be a form of assessment. Okay. Thank you for asking, bye. So folks, thinking to your review of this particular assignment, let's start with the first part here. To what extent does it fill tilt criteria? We can do a Zoom waterfall here. So folks, please in the chat, type your answer, but don't press enter quite yet, okay? Just type your answer, but don't press enter quite yet.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. To what extent does this assignment that we're looking at here fulfill tilt criteria? Those 3 items, or in what ways does it fulfill the tilt criteria in terms of purpose, task, or criteria? And thank you for asking. So when you've typed your answer in the chat but have not yet pressed enter, please give me a thumbs up. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Douglas, for confirming. Thank you, Carlo. Thank you, G. Hi, Natasha. Oh, you're good. All right, folks. With your Zoom chats in mind here, press enter, and we'll see all the answers pop up at once. All right, let's keep going here. Okay, we're going straight to the critique. Is that how that works? I appreciate everyone's enthusiasm here, but yeah, so here we do have the task, right? G did mention that the task is laid out, right? Of course, it's a needle. It's not, oh, completely, the task is completely fulfilled or completely unfulfilled. But here, yes, I think we could say that it is more fulfilled than not, all right? And let's go straight to the critique here. How could it be better have revised, right? It lacks a statement of purpose. Why are we even doing this? True. That's probably the most apparent one. Tom agrees as well. Carlo, missing purpose, right? Missing connection, missing take as to why we should even bother with this exercise. Sure. How about this? The challenge here, criteria. So in what ways does this fulfill or not fulfill criteria, folks? And feel free to blurt out loud or to type it in chat as well.
I think there's some attempts at identifying the criteria for doing the assignment correctly or incorrectly, but it still seems a little bit vague, not specific enough in some cases, but then, point 3, find and cite a peer review study. I mean, that seems pretty specific. But then other pieces seem less specific.
Okay, thank you, Carol, for sharing your thoughts. What else are we thinking, folks?
I kind of agree with Carol. Like, I think number 3 is pretty specific. Even the second one kind of talks about like you just need an explanation. So that's to me a level of here's how you can tell if you're on the right track with that, if you feel your explanation answers what you put. But number 1 seems a little open-ended. Like you could say list at least 5 observations, or like I feel like there's a quick way to make that a little more, have more standard and structure.
Okay, Natasha, thank you for sharing your thoughts and adding on to Carol's thoughts as well. Yeah, here's this idea where the moment that we as instructors find ourselves going, kind of not sure what counts as good here, then maybe that would be an opportunity for us to go, all right, let's talk a little bit more about what's exemplary. Oh, Douglas shares a point as well. This looks like a face-to-face statement. I can see additional context being given in a classroom that one might not realize is missing in an online course. Absolutely, Douglas. Thank you for sharing that as well. Okay, and just a moment of inspiration here, thinking to Carlos's point earlier about assignments and assessments. This is an assignment, right, that could conceivably be presented in an in-person setting. Sure. We can think about tilt the framework in those in-person settings, sure, in that moment where you're presenting an activity, but you can also think of it as a broad swath in the scope of your entire class, right? The culminating projects, that kind of thing. It doesn't have to just be that one assignment. You can think of it as a tilt framework to guide your design of all the coursework together as one unit, if that makes sense. Okay.
I have a comment, if I may.
Please, Tom. And hi.
For the second question, I would be remiss if I didn't explain, as it might be true of most of us, that I know nothing about mutant phenotypes. But having said that, I don't know if there are just 3 different types of developmental defects that could cause these mutants. So I don't know if those in parentheses are supposed to be examples or choose for each one. Choose which one. So I think that could be clearer. All right. In other words, is that EG or not? And the other thing is, if I'm going to ask them to hypothesize, then I'm going to be clearer. I'm going to ask them to form a hypothesis with a deep independent and independent variable. So I think that second one lacks clarity. Now that, to me.
Tom, thank you for speaking to the choir. I think as any outside observer, this could be clearer, and that means we could hit up the tilt checklist to revise. Okay. All right, let's keep going, folks. And thank you so much, folks, for sharing your insights here. Let's go to the next one. So a history, brass tag general history assignment. All right. Let's give this one about 3 minutes and see where this particular assignment does a good job of fulfilling the tilt criteria and where it could be improved. All right. And because we've gotten some practice with the first one, let's just do 2 minutes here. All right. Okay, folks, as with last time, thinking to this particular assignment now, do type out in the chat, where do we see it fulfilling tilt criteria and where could it be improved? Okay, actually, let's start with the first one. Where do we see it? Where do we see it in this particular assignment, all right? And like with last time, do not press enter, just type it out, all right? Okay, please give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, G. Oh, there's a gallery mode to Zoom. Right. Okay, fantastic. Yikes. Okie dokie. How about this, folks? Let's press enter. Let's see what we got. All right. Let's start with the first one here. Tasks are listed by G. Some criteria are listed 3 things, 2 or more. Purpose and criteria at different performance levels can be added. Okay, so here we have a situation where this particular assignment has hit up the task part. It is pretty clear cut. It is unambiguous as to what needs to be done to fulfill this particular assignment, okay? Carol aligns with tilt checklist by defining the tasks, right? What questions, how to analyze it. Heavy on criteria, 10 question structure from Natasha, absolutely. But light on the actual task and purpose. Aha, so here we have an interesting situation here, right? Between task versus criteria, right? So let's talk about that a little bit more. If this is a recurring activity, maybe the task will ask on the course on such as the first submission. Right. So here we have, it's context dependent as well, whether something becomes completely a criteria or not, right? But yes, there is a possibility that task and criteria are one and the same, right? But we don't necessarily always grade just for the task, the steps. We want the final product. All right, so maybe we can think of it as the distinction between parts versus whole. Okay, thank you so much for that point, though, Natasha. It's making my head think through that too. Douglas, missing purpose again. It seems very precise on the analysis, but there's no context for it. And Tom, thank you so much, Douglas. Tom, the order of these questions appear to be out of sync. Tom, would you mind unpacking that for us, please?
Sure. I've got to X you out here. Well, it's maybe not that important, but I mean, you ask for number 5, for what audience was the document written? Seems to me you should skip 6 for right now and go to 7 and 8. All right. I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and then 6, 9. I mean, you've got that 3 things the authors wrote that you think are important right in the middle of those. 5, 7, 8 seem to be very much related. For what audience was the document written? Why do you think the document is written? What evidence? I just think that they flow better that way.
Hey, Tom, thank you for bringing it up. Even with the task, it could be further clarified, right? Here's this process again of this iterative review, right? Iterative review. It's never a one and done sort of thing in designing assignments. Yes, Carol.
I was just going to add, Tom, I think that's a good point, because when we think about how you set up an assignment and you want to scaffold people to the students to the end point, you want to sort of train their brain on how to think about this stuff. So if the image analysis is a big piece of what you do in a history class, then you want to kind of train your brain, right, of how you look at it. So similar to what Jed was talking about before with the behavior, right? We look at the behavior, we decide on the challenging behavior for a student in special education, for example, but you kind of help the students, our candidates in the class, know how to think about it, like think like a teacher, think like a historian. So I think that's a good point when you talk about the purpose and the criteria, all of it together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, and just one last point to add on to both of those insights is by being subject experts, I think we've made a habit of how a person within our fields thinks. So yeah, absolutely. The ordering of the questions is crucial as well. We shouldn't presume that. And thank you for bringing this to bear, both of you. Okay, let's do some fun practice now. I'd like for you to think of an assignment you have. And if you're comfortable with it, it'll be fun for us to help kind of talk through it together for the next 15 minutes or so. All right, whatever you're comfortable with. I'd encourage you to pull up an assignment here that you've got. I can't help but notice your face, Natasha, as we're talking about this, but please, this is a place where we can talk about this safely as instructors, as colleagues. So let's spend the next 10 minutes here with pulling up an assignment and just going through it and see where you have hit up those 3 principles and where you know that you could possibly improve. Okay, so I'll mute myself here and let's carve the next 10 minutes to that. And I just want to thank folks for their energy and their presence today. It makes for an easy 9 o'clock on a Monday morning.
Thank you for being here and presenting this to us.
Yep. Cheers, Natasha. Not to interrupt people's thinking, I underestimated the amount of time we have. So how about in 3 minutes, whatever we can share so that we can open it up for discussion, okay? And I'll mute myself again. One more minute, everyone.
How do I load this assignment in this box?
Oh, hey, cheers, Tom. Let's see here. So on the chat, you'll see a T with a pencil, a smiley face, and a folded piece of paper, if you see it. The folded piece of paper. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, in the chat?
Yes, it would be in the chat box if
Okay.
you see it.
All right. All right. Oh, just put it there?
Yeah, so there should be a little icon of a folded piece of paper. If you click that, you can attach a file.
Okay, I had copied and pasted. That's why. Okay. It's a part of one, part of a syllabus for next semester. So I
Hey,
didn't make that into a file. So I'll let someone else do theirs.
well, bummer. It'd be fun to see what you got.
I'll see what I can do. Okay. I can do that. I can make a file. Let me.
All right, folks. So while Tom is preparing their file, please, if you want to talk through an assignment, you don't necessarily have to post anything. Where do you see opportunities, or where have you seen yourself apply tilt, and where do you see opportunities or observe opportunities for you to hone in on those principles? Oh,
Well, I'll offer some reflection on this. I think over the years I've gotten better at listing the criteria and really defining the task. I think I need to continue to improve on the purpose, because in my head, it's so clear what the purpose is and it should be obvious to everybody in my class. But I think I need to really work on that. And I also, I don't, just for a point of discussion, I don't know if anybody else has felt this or thought about this, but I'm always a little bit torn about the exemplars, right? So you give an exemplar, and then I'm worried that students are just gonna sort of copy and paste and plug in their own words and not really create their own assignment, because do you know what I mean? I don't know if anybody else has had that experience. So I've tossed around different ways to show exemplars. I noticed on your example, Jed, that you give snippets. And I think that rather than give somebody a whole project that's an exemplar, maybe giving snippets of sections might be a way to do that. But I'm just curious if anybody else has thought about that or has handled that, or what your ideas are.
It's what? I'm sorry, I was thinking in two directions.
Just about the use of exemplars. Are exemplars used? Do you use exemplars, and how do you do that so that students are still creating original work?
that's a valid question. I'm going to wait until we have an opportunity here.
So for me, I think about exemplars in a couple ways. One is I teach a human development class, and their culminating activity is to interview a person and kind of walk through their lifespan development, looking at certain developmental milestones. And I give an exemplar, as Jed was saying, previous kind of outstanding submission, but I use it wholesale. It's kind of a document that they can refer to. Given the circumstances where they're interviewing someone individually, there really is an opportunity to copy, but it gives them a framework for how to kind of follow along and what a good paper looks like. So my practice has been to use whole cloth exemplars rather than snippets.
Thank you, Carlo.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Tom. No, go ahead, Tom.
I have a leadership course that I just completely redesigned, and two of the assignments are very different. They're application assignments. One of them, which is now in the chat box, asked them to create a a leadership case of their own, develop some questions and then answer them themselves. That's easy. I mean, I may have done a poor job of describing it. You can tell me in a moment. But that I do have an exemplar for. I don't put it there. I do indicate that later in the semester, I will give them a copy of a former one that was done. A couple of them, one poorly and one bad, and one well. But for the other assignment, I asked them as a very last assignment to develop a leadership theory of their own, give it their own name, be integrative, et cetera. Now that I don't give an exemplar for because I'm doing, it just doesn't work. I don't want them to see someone else's. I want them to be original. I want it to be original thinking. So I do think that I do think that some assignments do not call for an exemplar.
Tom, that's a really compelling insight. This idea that it's even with exemplars, it's context specific. I'd like to add also to Carlos's point, and it wasn't clear with my example. To elaborate on my example, I actually do share wholesale as well. Yeah, I just didn't want to clutter the presentation. Yeah, but no, it's a valid question. Are we enabling the students? Are we robbing them of an opportunity for learning? I think in this instance, as I understand it, so much of the students are learning things for the first time that it's like, how could you talk about something if you've never seen what it looks like? So I have considered it from that vantage point, just shoring up background knowledge. But absolutely, there is a concern of, well, if a person, let's say at a master's level, is working on a capstone, should we be presenting multiple capstones for them? Like, is that something that is appropriate, that kind of thing? Sure. Context. Looking at actually before, let me read the comments. I want to honor the comments here.
While you're reading, you wanted to read them to us. I was just going to share that I also teach a capstone course, Exit, for interdisciplinary bachelor students. So I do a lot of sharing, but a lot of times because they're in different disciplines and we are the mix them all together space, it works out really well because sometimes they learn things from other people's discipline that's not really a discipline they were planning to include in their project, but something that appears said or shared sparked their interest.
Thank you, Natasha, for unpacking. I'm looking at your post that you shared as well here. Immediately, just as a quick scan, yeah, you've got the task outlined very well here, right? And it looks like you've got, let's see, you have what counts as exemplary. You got to do this, and this is what will count. I think it helps to add and this is something that probably is, Carol brought this up earlier, is for a lot of us, I think it's the purpose piece. The purpose piece could be further honed in upon, which is on the contrast here. Tom, I really want to commend you for sharing your leadership case. Here we have a situation where you've explained why we're even bothering with this particular assignment, this coursework, okay? And I do want to also commend you with how you're positioning it from a lens of this is something that you're going to do in real life as well, your assignment, okay? So folks, 9:50 on the dot here. I want to, as an aside, one last point from Douglas, as an aside, I think that a good rubric can do a lot of the same work as a good exemplar. Absolutely. You have a good set of standards and expectations. It explains itself. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Douglas. Folks, I just want to say Carol, Natasha, Carlo, Tom, G, Douglas, and I believe we have Weha here. Thank you so much for carving time this Monday morning. I'm so delighted to see you all and to share some thoughts with you. At this juncture, what questions or comments or concerns might you have? And yeah, if at all, that we can address before we conclude our meeting today. Thank you for being here, G.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, for setting this up. Happy Monday, everyone.